Hi, this is Denise.
Hey, this is Maggie.
Welcome to our podcast, Candor and Courage at Work.
Denise and I have known each other for a long time, a couple of decades, HR pros, and we thought it might be helpful if we got together and shared some of the things that we've learned along the way.
That's right, Maggie. Many struggle with being candid and being courageous, and we just want to use what we've learned to help you use those traits in your daily work life.
Here's hoping that makes you more successful. And here we go.
Hi, Maggie.
Hey, Denise.
So last episode, Maggie covered the 9 types of courage and gave us some great examples. And so why don't you, for our listeners, give us a quick summary of last episode?
Yeah, so if you caught last episode, you may recall and may have been surprised to really think about the fact that courage isn't just what we always think of it as. We always think of those first responders, the folks that are demonstrating physical courage.
Correct.
Which is a type of courage, but there are 8 other types. There's creative, psychological, spiritual, moral, which I'm probably best known for, and civil, which is also speaking truth to power, that often accompanies that moral courage, interpersonal, intellectual, and then just everyday courage. Something as simple as a smile can be a courageous act if you're meeting someone you don't know, or if you're just encountering a stranger in the store and you just are demonstrating a simple act of kindness.
That was the most impactful for me last episode because, again, I think of courage in terms of bold acts, large acts, and just that small act of kindness and how just a smile can really make a difference to people who might be going through hard times.
Yeah, I always say the world's full of the walking wounded. And we just don't know what somebody else is going through. Yeah. And so some of the examples, taking risks, facing fears, facing problems, standing up for yourself, which is a big one. That is a showstopper for a lot of folks, often finding it easier to stand up for others. Were some of the examples that I shared when we last talked.
Okay, so last episode, you closed with the question, when have you felt the fear and done it anyway?
Yeah, and that was really intentional because it really aligns with a book I discovered in 1990, which was when I left my first HR job. I mentioned that last time. I did not have another job, but it was a decision I made to preserve my own well-being. And I found this book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, that had been published a couple of years earlier. The book is by Susan Jeffers, and so I thought I would use that, much in the way you did Radical Candor, in encouraging our listeners to read the book, find the book and read it. I have bought and given away, I don't know how many copies of that book over the years as I've helped others try to understand their own individual paths around courage. And it was just republished last year. So it's now got some fresh updates and insights.
Well, I'm definitely going to have to check that out. And I'm a library girl, so I'll check that out of my library. I don't want you to donate. Save your copy for somebody. I'll look in the library. But so the title, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. So that brings to mind for me, your parents saying, so if your friends would jump off a bridge, are you going to do the same? So if Maggie and Denise are going to jump off the bridge, are you going to do the same? Right. Is that what the book is talking about?
No. It's not feel the fear and do it anyway. Consequences be damned. It's about being mindful and recognizing when fear is occurring and taking account for that, but still being prepared to overcome it.
Okay.
And so a lot of times it is those small acts that you don't necessarily think about being courageous. And again, for me, I've realized that overcoming some of those assumptions or improving my understanding about a subject is really just a function of learning. And that's where this book is really invaluable. There are really 3 lessons embedded within the book that I wanted to share with our listeners. And those 3 lessons are around levels of fear. Similarly to talking about the types of courage in the last episode, I want to focus in on the fact that there are levels of fear, because this is not something that we intuitively know. We intuitively know if we feel fear, we feel fear. But fear arises as a result of different instigators. And so level 1 fear, for example, are things that just happen. And those things that just happen to us are things like aging.
Okay.
If we're fortunate, we get to age. Mm-hmm. But as we age, there are fears that come with that. And some of those fears might be around potentially becoming disabled, or fears around, what am I going to do in retirement? In today's world, fears of natural disaster.
Absolutely.
Or man-made disasters that could occur. There are a lot of folks that are afraid of dying. There are probably a lot more folks that are afraid of losing a loved one. Mm-hmm. And that's a real fear. There's a fear of being involved in an accident or suffering from a financial crisis. So those are just things that happen. And those are different than the things that require action. Okay, so you have those things that happen, and there are things that you can do to mitigate natural disasters. Mm-hmm. Do you have a plan? Financial crisis, do you have a plan? Retirement, do you have a plan? If you become disabled, do you have a plan? Losing a loved one, how are you going to navigate that grief? Mm-hmm. But other things that specifically require action include things like changing a career.
Okay, so when you said things that happened to you, I thought of, I have no control over that. But now we're transitioning into things that I might have control over, such as
that
choosing
specifically
something
require
different.
Action. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Making friends, ending a relationship, having a child, asserting oneself, traveling, making a mistake. You know, and again, I mentioned this in the last episode, the one fear that most folks fear more than death itself is public speaking. And so those kinds of things don't just happen, but they do require action. So there's 2 categories in level 1. It's just things that happen because we're walking the face of the earth. And then it's things that happen because we make them happen, or we enable them to happen, or maybe we take action and prevent them from happening. Mm-hmm. But all of those, on some levels, invoke fear, and all of those require some type of courage. And so to put it into context, there are also fears that are not situation-oriented specifically. These are level 2 fears, and they all involve the ego. And so a level 2 fear could be rejection.
Yes.
Failure. Being afraid of success. Mm-hmm. Feeling shame. We've already talked about being vulnerable. Those are all internal ego-driven. Loss of image, loss of face. Mm-hmm. Somebody being disappointed in us or disapproving of choices that we've made. Those are all inner states of mind. And a fear of rejection, for example, will affect all areas of your life. If that's deeply embedded, you take steps to begin to protect yourself, to shield yourself from it. And that's because you're feeling that fear so deeply. When I think about some of the experiences that I had as an HR professional, I recognized when I was pulling that armor on to shield myself from being shot as the messenger, for example.
Yes.
I mean, there are probably countless examples of that we could share.
Yeah. You better lead with "Don't shoot the messenger."
That's a good way to put on a little armor and shield yourself from.
Prepare yourself.
Yes,
I'm about to tell you something.
Yes, I'm about to feel the fear and do it anyway, and experience that moral courage and maybe that civil courage of speaking truth to power and standing up for what's right. So. Yeah, but it's very interesting to think about and to have Dr. Jeffers highlight all of those internal things. And that's maybe those fears that sometimes we share with others and sometimes we don't. Mm-hmm. Even in level 1, there tends to be, in my experience, a better preparedness to share those kinds of things around the questions of, what am I going to do when I retire? Or what happens if the bottom drops out of the market? Or just I've made a mistake and I got to figure out how to fix it and that sort of thing. But the parts of it that we don't discuss are those internal, those ego pieces. And then finally, level 3, which is really what's behind what we might experience in levels 1 and 2, and it's the biggest fear of all. And Dr. Jeffers says it's that I can't handle it. I just can't handle it. And so when we think about level 1 fears and, for example, potentially becoming disabled, that level 3 fear is I can't handle that. Or if it's making a mistake, internally the conversation is that's stoking that fear is I can't handle it. Pretty heavy stuff, I know.
It is. And what I think about, as you were speaking is another fear that I think resonates with me is, am I good enough? Am I worthy, as Jamie Kern Lima says in her book? Am I a fraud?
Yeah, the imposter syndrome.
Right, the imposter syndrome, exactly.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I want to recognize for us and for our listeners is just the fact that you're sitting there and contemplating these questions is half the battle. How many people go through life and don't think about, what if I get sick? What if I'm going to lose a loved one? I'm not prepared at all. And so I feel like just sitting down and looking at these situations is really the first step in addressing how you are going to handle it. So,
and that's intellectual courage, in case you want to know the type, because you're challenging your own beliefs.
Right. And you're willing to do that. You're being vulnerable
you're
with
building
yourself.
That muscle. You're building that muscle.
Right.
Yep, that courage muscle. And it is, noteworthy that Dr. Jeffers goes on to point out, if you knew that you could handle anything that came your way, there's nothing you can't handle. Mm-hmm. So, in other words, if you can practice courage because you've learned to recognize the fear and overcome it, you can literally do anything. Not jump off a bridge. Not suggesting that.
Don't worry, Mom.
Don't try this at home.
Right.
We're focusing on building a muscle with our intended audience of listeners being professionals who are looking to become more successful by taking mindful approaches to overcoming the fear and practicing candor and courage. But when I was thinking about this and putting into context how embedded fear, generalized fear is early in our life, it comes even as your mom said as you were heading to school. What did your mom say as you were heading to school?
Don't get into trouble. No. No, her main thing was be careful.
Right. And so from kindergarten on, in some form or fashion, be careful was what, mom said to us or dad said to us. It wasn't often, if ever, that we were, said, hey, have a great day at school. Take a lot of risks today, darling. I mean, it just didn't come up that way. And so that really sets us up from an early age to shy away from experiencing courageous acts in life. And if you stop and think about it, what's motivating the parent to say, be careful, is level 3, fear. I can't handle it if something happens to you.
Yes.
And so that is a protective measure that the parent is taking, which is demonstrative of their own fear. And in doing that, they're embedding fear in the child.
Unconsciously. I care. I don't want you to get hurt.
Right.
I want you to be safe, make good choices. But what is it teaching us as youngsters, as we move throughout that school day?
Unintended consequences. Unintended consequences. So hopefully understanding both the types of fear that we talked about in the last episode and the levels of fear that we've touched on today really begins to help our listeners think more specifically about their own fears and thus their own courage.
Yeah. So if our listeners, if I want to test some of these things out, Maggie, what are some questions that we should consider?
Well, I think maybe the best way for me to introduce those questions is to do so exactly the way I do as an adult contemplating getting on a roller coaster.
Okay.
So if you think about getting on a roller coaster, well, let me preface that with the fact that I fell over the side of a cliff, a 40-foot cliff, when I was about 9 years old.
You are kidding me.
I'm not. I'll share that story with you sometime. Fortunately, I grabbed hold of a tree as I went over the edge of about a 2-foot tree and hung on. And so I didn't fall all the way. But before that, I was an avid roller coaster rider. We always went to Kings Island in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we had the Red Racer and the Blue Racer. Great old wooden roller coasters. After that, I was not a fan of roller coasters. I did not like the sensation of falling anymore. Didn't like heights anymore after that either. So that's why this is such an easy example for me to use in introducing the questions is, what do I do as an adult thinking about getting on a roller coaster? And so ask yourself, what do you observe, think, and feel when you approach the roller coaster? I can tell you my stomach has butterflies and my knees go all wonky. I can literally watch a commercial, for example, where the riders are on a roller coaster and as they crest the top and start to go down, I still experience the butterflies and the knees going all wonky. So it's really that self-reflection. What do you observe? What do you think? And what do you feel?
So you're facing that fear by putting yourself in that moment.
Put yourself in that moment and accounting for the impacts of that fear.
So prepare for the fear.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then what do people around you say or do that help you face your fear? And so again, using the roller coaster, I try to convince myself, look, if kids can ride that roller coaster, so can I, right?
But how many kids have fallen off a cliff?
Well, I don't know.
I'm talking you out of it.
I don't know.
The kids are fine. You'll be fine.
Right. So I always use that because I'm like, dang, I used to love doing that, until I was 9. And so, again, the question is, what do the people around you say or do to help you face your fear? And then notice at what point in time did your fear start to go down?
Okay.
And how did you feel afterwards? So taking yourself through that process of observing how the fear is impacting you, how others are encouraging you, and then how did it feel when the fear started to go down? And then how did it feel afterwards? And for me, I was scared the entire time I'm on a roller coaster. Terrified.
Yeah.
Convinced I'm going to die. Not puking, but feeling like I could. All of that. But totally exhilarated after I got off.
It brings back to mind some things for me, the questions that you ask, and the importance, I think, of preparing ourselves when we're about to do something courageous. And, when I have a daughter and never had a child before, didn't have a child after, but what is labor going to be like? I have no idea.
Right.
Is it going to, I've seen movies, TV shows. It looks very painful, but having gone to those classes to prepare me for that was so helpful to just imagine, okay, I see what's happening here. This, knowing the mechanics of the labor and this is what's going to happen. And on the end, I'm going to have a child.
Yep.
And that brought on a whole other fear. What mistakes am I going to make with her? There are plenty. Trust me, she'll tell you. No, she's very kind when I apologize to her for her upbringing. But anyway, I agree with you. I think that just that mechanic of going through things and challenging yourself with, okay, it is going to be frightening. And what can I do to push forward because of the joy I'm missing out of by simply going back to my 9-year-old self and the feeling on that side of a cliff, which I have got to get that story.
I will share that with you.
30 plus years of knowing Maggie and
never knew
that. So she stumped me today.
Yeah, it was quite the experience and obviously impactful. But you're talking about giving birth and preparations for that is really driving home the point that I want to share with our listeners. And it's really about learning. It's about asking good questions. It's about learning. It's about being mindful in how you can be methodical in recognizing the fears that arise. And bringing another human being into the world is totally level 3 fear. Like, I can't handle it. It has to run through the mind of a prospective parent repeatedly, and maybe even as the child grows. I can't handle it when they go off to school. I can't handle it when they graduate from school. Can't handle it when they move out. Can't handle it when they bring a child into the world. All of those things. But recognizing methodically those ways that fear impacts us helps us also recognize the outcomes of courage when it's exercised. And your word, joy, is perfect. So,
and the benefit, just there is good on the other side. Anything worth having is worth doing and pushing through when you really don't know whether you should or not. So sometimes feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yep.
But not jump off a bridge.
No jumping off bridges. No,
well, Maggie, thank you so much for that. I mean, again, so many insights that you've shared with us, and I appreciate all of the work you've done in this podcast to help me better understand courage and fear that can go along with it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm happy to share those experiences in continuing to fill the mission of Candor and Courage at Work to enable other professionals to benefit from our experiences, not necessarily falling off cliffs, but benefit from our experiences in hopes of being more successful. And certainly, until we meet again, being candid and courageous in small and manageable ways is the way to ensure that you're getting started in building those muscles.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today for Candor and Courage at Work.
We hope you found some inspiration and encouragement in today's episode.
For more information or to connect with us, visit our website, candorandcourageatwork.com, and be sure to download future episodes wherever you listen.